This week marks 2 years since the insurrection on the US Capitol. Joining me now to discuss not only that, but what he makes of some of the biggest political events of the past few days, as well as so much more, is the former US ambassador to the United Nations and the former national security advisor to President Trump, John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for making the time.
Glad to be back with you.
Let's just begin with something that isn't necessarily relevant to the titles that you've previously held, but is still very much impacting the American political scene as the vote for Speaker of the House takes place. What do you make of what's been happening as of late? And do you ultimately believe Kevin McCarthy will be able to secure enough votes today?
Well, it's certainly been a long time since the speakership has not been determined on the first ballot. That's true, but in earlier days in American history, this was not untypical. So I don't necessarily view the confusion of January the 3rd as being indicative of what will come later. Sometimes these really are tempests in a teapot, and things move on. But it's very uncertain at the moment, and with a very narrow majority, I don't think anybody can really predict what's going to happen. My guess is that those who are opposed to Kevin McCarthy believe they don't need an alternative. What they want to do is veto him, which they are effectively doing at the moment, and then worry about who would actually become the speaker later. So they're in a very strong tactical position. And after three votes where McCarthy's position is not improving, in fact, it's declining somewhat, I think his chances are on the downhill slope at this point.
And when you look at the fact that this week marks 2 years since January the 6th, what are you going to be thinking about as this week marks 2 years since January 6th, and what do you think the American people should be reflecting on?
Well, I think January the 6th was one of the saddest days in American history. There's no doubt about it. But I think what people need to look at, and I mean, including not just January the 6th, but the whole effort to contest the 2020 election without evidence. And what happened is, it's certainly true that Donald Trump and his friends stressed the constitutional system, but in every material respect, the system held. So I think it's a mistake to draw overbroad conclusions from insufficient data. What Trump did was aberrational. It was obviously unacceptable, but I don't think that it really foreshadows the way ahead. We're in a very divided partisan political environment right now. Trump was part of the cause for that, but far from the only cause.
And as we move forward, I know you've made comments surrounding you would potentially be making a 2024 bid if that's what it takes to ensure Donald Trump does not end up in the White House again. Speak to the reasoning behind you saying that, and when can people maybe expect to hear more?
Well, I was very disturbed by the lack of reaction of the current field of potential Republican candidates for president when Trump said that the Constitution should be terminated, key provisions of it should be terminated so that he could be declared the winner of the 2020 election. That's about as outrageous as anything Trump has said. But what really surprised and disturbed me, as I say, was the lack of direct rejection of that argument by many of the potential wannabes. I looked at running for president very seriously in 2016. It's a substantial decision to make. I'm still considering it. I do think it's important that if you get into the race, it's to get in to win, not simply to make a point. So I'm still talking to people all around the country, and I don't plan to think on it forever, but I'm not at this point ready to make a decision.
Okay, that's the former national security advisor to President Donald Trump and the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. Ambassador, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be with you. Thanks again.